Her frozen fingers clawed at the wooden door. 3 desperate knocks. Then her knees buckled into the snow. "Please, help my kids." The words came out broken, barely human. Blood from her cracked lips stained the frost. In her arms, a toddler had stopped shivering, stopped crying, stopped moving. Behind her, 3 children stood like ghosts in the blizzard bruises hidden beneath torn coats, eyes hollow with terror. No child should know. "He's coming for us. He'll kill them all." The door swung open. Former Navy SEAL Marcus Cole looked down at the dying woman and the children she'd carried through hell. In that moment, a man who had spent 3 years waiting to die finally found his reason to live. If this story touches your heart, please subscribe to our channel and follow this journey to the very end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We'd love to see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The knocking came at 11 minutes past midnight. Marcus Cole heard it through layers of whiskey-dulled sleep. 3 sharp sounds that his trained mind registered before his body could respond. He lay still on the narrow cot, eyes open in the darkness, listening. The wind screamed outside, rattling the cabin walls with fury. He told himself it was a branch, a loose shutter, his imagination playing tricks again. Then Ranger's low growl cut through the storm's howl. Marcus swung his legs off the cot. His German shepherd stood rigid at the door, ears flat, hackles raised along his spine. In 7 years together, through 2 combat deployments and countless nightmares, Marcus had learned to trust the dog's instincts more than his own. The knocking came again, weaker this time, desperate. "Easy, boy." Marcus's voice came out rough from disuse. He hadn't spoken to another human in 11 days. He crossed to the window, staying low, staying careful. Old habits never died, especially the ones that had kept him alive. What he saw through the frost-covered glass made his heart stop. A woman stood hunched against the wind, clutching something against her chest. Behind her, barely visible through the driving snow, 3 small figures huddled together. Children. Someone had brought children up this mountain in the middle of a killing storm. Marcus yanked open the door. The wind hit him like a physical blow, driving ice into his face and stealing his breath. The woman looked up at him, and he would never forget her eyes in that moment. Brown eyes huge with terror, ringed with exhaustion so deep it had carved shadows into her gaunt face. "Please," she gasped. Her voice was barely audible above the storm. "Please help my kids." Then her knees buckled. Marcus caught her with both arms, and the shock of how light she was, how cold, sent alarm racing through his system. The bundle against her chest moved weakly. A child. A baby. He could see blue-tinged lips, closed eyes, skin the color of old wax. "Inside," he commanded. "Now! All of you!" The 3 children stumbled forward. A boy who looked about 8, trying so hard to be brave that his whole body shook with the effort. Twin children, maybe 5 years old, clutching each other with frost-white hands. They moved like sleepwalkers, like their bodies had forgotten how to feel. Marcus half-carried the woman across the threshold. Ranger moved aside but stayed alert, his amber eyes tracking every movement. The moment the last child crossed inside, Marcus slammed the door against the storm. The silence that followed felt almost violent. "The fire," Marcus said. He was already moving, lowering the woman onto his cot. "Boy, can you hear me? What's your name?" The 8-year-old stared at him with hollow eyes. "Noah. Noah, I need you to get those 2 by the fire. Can you do that?" The boy nodded. His teeth chattered so hard Marcus could hear them across the room. But he took his younger siblings by the hands and led them toward the wood stove. Good kid. Tough kid. Marcus had trained soldiers who showed less composure under pressure. The woman on the cot grabbed his wrist with fingers like ice. "Emma," she whispered. "My baby. Please." She stopped crying an hour ago. She stopped. Marcus looked down at the toddler. 2 years old, maybe less. Her lips were blue. Her skin had no warmth at all. He pressed 2 fingers against her tiny neck and felt nothing. For 3 terrible seconds, nothing. Then so faint he almost imagined it, a flutter. A whisper of pulse fighting against impossible cold. She's alive. Marcus was already stripping off his flannel shirt. "Ranger here." The dog came instantly understanding without being told. Marcus wrapped the child in his shirt, then placed her against Ranger's thick fur, tucking both into the space beside the fire. The dog curled around her, sharing the heat of his body, his eyes never leaving Marcus's face. "I'm going to save her," Marcus told the woman. He didn't know if it was a promise or a prayer. "But I need to know what happened. How long were you out there?" 3 hours. The woman's voice cracked. "Maybe 4. The car died. The engine it stopped. We tried to wait, but the cold came so fast. I saw lights up the mountain. I hoped. You walked 4 miles up this mountain, in this storm, with 4 children. I had to." Tears carved hot tracks down her frozen cheeks. "He would have found us if we stayed." Marcus went still. The woman closed her eyes. Her body shook with something that went beyond cold. "My husband, Victor. He's going to kill us." Before Marcus could respond, a sound came from the other side of the room. Small, broken, barely human. Noah was crying. Marcus turned and saw the 8-year-old on his knees beside the fire, his arms wrapped around his trembling siblings, tears streaming down his face as he tried to hold himself together and failing. The twins weren't crying. They weren't doing anything at all. They just stared at nothing with blank eyes that Marcus had seen before, on children in villages, after airstrikes, on survivors who had seen too much to process. "Noah." Marcus crossed to him and knelt down. "Look at me, son." The boy raised his eyes. The fear in them was old, deep. The kind of fear that didn't come from one night in a storm. "Are you hurt?" Marcus asked. "Any of you hurt?" Noah hesitated. Then slowly he pulled up the sleeve of his thin coat. Bruises. Dark, finger-shaped bruises wrapped around his forearm. Healing bruises beneath fresh ones. A pattern Marcus recognized with sickening certainty. "Your father did this." Noah's chin quivered. "He said if we told anyone he'd make us disappear. He said he could make anyone disappear." Marcus felt something shift inside him. Something that had been dead for 3 years, beginning to stir. He reached out and put his hand on Noah's shoulder, feeling the bones beneath thin fabric, the trembling of a child pushed beyond his limits. "I'm going to tell you something, Noah, and I need you to believe it. Can you do that?" The boy nodded. "No one is going to hurt you tonight. Not your father, not anyone. I'm going to keep you safe. I'm going to keep all of you safe. Do you understand how?" Noah's voice broke on the word. "You don't know what he's like. He has money. He has people who work for him. He always finds—" "I spent 15 years as a Navy SEAL," Marcus cut in quietly. "I've protected people from men who made your father look like a schoolyard bully. Whatever he is, whoever he has, I've faced worse and walked away. So I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Noah stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly, something in his expression changed. The terror didn't disappear, but something else rose beneath it. The first flicker of hope Marcus had seen in any of them. "Yes, sir." Good. Marcus squeezed his shoulder once and stood. Now I need you to be brave a little longer. Can you watch your sisters while I help your mom and Emma? Yes, sir. The twins hadn't spoken a word. Marcus knelt before them, studying their faces. A girl and a boy, identical in their fear. The girl's eyes were fixed on her mother across the room. The boys were fixed on nothing at all. What are your names? Marcus asked gently. Nothing. Mia, Noah said quietly. And Lucas. They haven't talked since we left. Since he found out Mom was leaving. What happened when he found out? Noah's face went pale. He threw Lucas into the wall, and he said if Mom took us, he'd sell us. Like the other kids. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Other kids, I wasn't supposed to hear. Noah's voice dropped to a whisper. But I heard him on the phone. He has places. Homes where kids go. And they don't come back. He said we'd go there too if we didn't behave. Marcus forced his expression to remain calm, but his mind was racing. Foster homes. Kids who don't come back. A wealthy man with money and influence and secrets worth killing to protect. He'd seen pieces of this puzzle before in briefings about criminal networks and intel reports about trafficking routes. He'd just never expected to find it on his doorstep. You're safe now, he told Noah. Go sit with your sisters. Marcus returned to the cot where the woman lay. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. He pulled a rough wool blanket over her and leaned close. Ma'am, I need you to stay with me. What's your name? Grace. Her eyes fluttered open. Grace Mitchell. Grace, I'm Marcus. I'm going to take care of your children, but I need to know what we're dealing with. You said your husband would find you. How? Grace's face twisted with fresh fear. I don't know. He always knows. He has people everywhere. Police, lawyers. I found files on his computer, Marcus. Photos, lists of children, shipping dates. Shipping dates. He moves them. Grace's voice broke. He takes children from foster homes he controls, and he moves them to buyers. That's what he does. That's what he's been doing for years. And when I confronted him when I said I was going to the police... She stopped. Her hand moved to her throat, and Marcus noticed for the first time the fading bruises there. Finger marks. He said he'd kill me slow, Grace whispered. And he'd make the children watch. Then he'd sell them to the worst people he knew. People who like to hurt kids. He said it would be my fault. All my fault. Marcus felt the cold stone in his chest beginning to heat. For 3 years he'd felt nothing but grief and guilt. Now something else was rising. Something old and familiar and dangerous. When did you leave? Yesterday morning. He was at a meeting. I took the kids, took nothing else, just drove. I thought if I could get far enough. Does he know where you were heading? No, I didn't even know. I just drove north. Then the storm hit and the car died and I saw your lights, and I thought... Grace grabbed his hand with sudden, desperate strength. Please, you have to help us. If he finds us, if he takes my children, I'll never see them again. They'll disappear like all the others. Marcus looked across the room at Noah, still huddled with his silent siblings by the fire. At Ranger, still curled protectively around baby Emma. At this broken family that had stumbled into his isolation seeking refuge from a monster. He's not going to find you, Marcus said. And if he does, he's going to wish he hadn't. The words came from somewhere deep. Somewhere he thought had died with his wife and daughter 3 years ago. He meant every syllable. Grace searched his face, looking for doubt, for hesitation. She found none. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, but these were different. These were the tears of someone who had been holding on by her fingernails and finally found something solid to grip. "Thank you," she breathed. "God, thank you." A small sound came from near the fire. Marcus turned and saw Emma stirring in Ranger's protective embrace. Her tiny hand moved, grasping weakly at the dog's fur. Her eyes fluttered. "Mama." The word was barely audible, a whisper from blue lips that were slowly, impossibly regaining color. Grace sobbed and tried to rise. Marcus helped her, supporting her weight as she crossed to her daughter. She gathered Emma into her arms, and the toddler burrowed against her chest, seeking warmth, seeking safety. "I'm here, baby," Grace rocked her gently. "Mama's here. You're okay. We're all okay." Marcus watched them, and something cracked inside his chest. He saw another woman holding another child. Sarah, 2 days before she died, cradling Lily in the nursery, singing softly. A memory so sharp it drew blood. He turned away, fighting for control. "We need to get her core temperature up gradually," he said, his voice rough. "I'll heat some broth. She needs fluids." He moved to the small kitchen area, grateful for the task, for the distraction. His hands shook as he filled a pot with water. 3 years of numbness, and now everything was crashing back at once. The grief, the guilt, the rage he'd buried with his family. "Mr. Marcus turned. Noah stood behind him, arms wrapped around himself. "Is she going to be okay, Emma?" "She's going to be fine. Your mother got her here in time." Noah's lip trembled. "Mom almost died getting us here. She gave Emma her coat. She gave us all her warm stuff. She was shaking so bad at the end she could barely walk." "Your mother is very brave. She's the bravest person I know." Noah's voice dropped. "But she's scared of him. We're all scared of him. He makes people do what he wants. He makes them disappear." Marcus knelt to meet the boy's eyes. "Noah, I want you to listen carefully. Your father sounds like a powerful man, but I've spent my whole adult life dealing with powerful men who thought they were untouchable. They all learned the same lesson in the end." "What lesson?" "There's always someone more dangerous." Marcus held the boy's gaze. "And tonight your father's luck ran out, because he sent you to me." Noah stared at him for a long moment. Then, for the first time since he'd stumbled through the door, something like relief flickered across his young face. "What was your job?" he asked. "In the SEALs, I protected people who couldn't protect themselves. Did you ever fail?" The question hit harder than Noah could know. Marcus thought of Sarah, of Lily, of the fire that consumed them while he was half a world away, unable to save them. "Once," he said quietly. "I failed once, and I've spent 3 years punishing myself for it. But not tonight. Tonight, I won't fail." He stood and returned to preparing the broth. Behind him, he heard Noah move back toward his sisters. The cabin was warming slowly, pushing back against the killing cold that had followed them inside. Marcus paused at the window, looking out into the storm. Somewhere out there, a man named Victor Mitchell was hunting for his family. A man who trafficked children. A man who had beaten his son and strangled his wife and threatened to sell his own children to pedophiles. For the first time in 3 years, Marcus Cole felt something besides grief. He felt purpose. The storm would last at least another day. That gave him time to prepare, time to plan. Victor Mitchell thought he was pursuing helpless prey. He had no idea that the prey had found a protector, and that protector was done running from life. Ranger appeared at his side, pressing against his leg. The dog's amber eyes looked up at him with an expression that Marcus knew well. Ready. Alert. Waiting for orders. "Not tonight, boy," Marcus murmured. "But soon. We've got work to do." He looked back at the woman and children gathered near his fire. 4 kids who'd been terrorized by their own father. A mother who'd walked through a blizzard to save them. A family held together by nothing but love and desperation. And suddenly the silence of the past 3 years didn't feel like peace anymore. It felt like cowardice. He'd been hiding from life, hiding from pain, telling himself he was doing penance when really he was just afraid. No more. Marcus turned from the window and went to check on Emma. The toddler had fallen asleep in her mother's arms, her breathing shallow but steady. Her color was improving. She would live. They would all live. He would make sure of it. Mini-climax, Emma's pulse discovery. An hour later, the cabin had settled into an uneasy calm. Marcus had managed to get warm broth into Emma and the other children. The twins still hadn't spoken, but they'd eaten, and their eyes had lost some of their vacant horror. Noah had finally stopped shaking. Grace had told him more about Victor, each detail adding another layer to Marcus's understanding of the threat. Victor Mitchell, 45 years old, owner of Mitchell Family Services, a chain of private foster care facilities across Virginia, West Virginia, and North Carolina. Philanthropist, church deacon, community leader, and underneath it all, a monster who sold children. "How long has it been going on?" Marcus asked. Grace sat on the cot, Emma sleeping against her chest. "I don't know. Years, maybe. I never suspected. He was always so careful, so perfect in public. I thought the late nights were business meetings. The phone calls were investors. I was so stupid." "You weren't stupid. You were trusting. There's a difference." "I should have known." Grace's voice cracked. "The signs were there. The way he'd come home sometimes with this look in his eyes. The way he insisted we never visit his facilities. The children who were supposed to be placed with families but somehow never showed up in any records." "You found the files on his computer?" "By accident. He left it open one night. There were photos, Marcus. Children. Dozens of children. And next to each photo numbers. Prices." Grace's face contorted with disgust. "He was selling them like products." "Did you make copies?" "I took pictures with my phone. I have them. Everything. The files, the account numbers, the names of buyers." Her eyes met his with sudden intensity. "That's why he wants us dead. Not just because I'm leaving. Because I have proof. If that evidence gets to the right people, his whole operation comes down." Marcus felt a spark of fierce satisfaction. "Where's the phone?" "In my coat. I didn't dare leave it in the car." He retrieved the soaked coat from where it had fallen near the door and found the phone in an inside pocket. It was wet, but intact. He pressed the power button and felt relief when the screen flickered to life. "Show me." Grace navigated with trembling fingers, pulling up photo after photo. Children's faces stared back at Marcus from the screen. Scared faces. Hopeful faces. Faces that didn't know what was coming. Below each photo spreadsheet, data. Ages. Locations. Buyer codes. Transaction amounts. Marcus had seen evil in his years as a SEAL. He'd fought against it in villages in Afghanistan, in compounds in Syria, in dark corners of the world where humanity went to die. But this was different. This was happening here in America wearing the mask of charity. "How many?" he asked quietly. "I counted 47 different children in those files, going back 2 years. Grace's voice broke. 47 kids, Marcus. And those are just the ones he kept records of. Mini-climax evidence revelation. Do you know any of the buyers? Some, politicians, businessmen, a judge from Richmond. They're all protected, all connected. Victor once told me that half the people who owed him favors could make any investigation disappear. Marcus absorbed this. A network of corruption reaching into the highest levels of power. Dirty cops, dirty judges, dirty politicians. Going to the wrong person with this evidence could get them all killed. What about federal? He asked. FBI. Victor bragged about having contacts there too. Someone in the Norfolk field office. I don't know who. Marcus nodded grimly. This was going to be complicated. But complicated didn't mean impossible. It just meant careful. Get some sleep, he told Grace. You're exhausted. I'll keep watch. How can I sleep? He's out there. He's looking for us right now. The storm will slow him down. No one's driving up this mountain tonight. We have time. You don't understand. Grace's eyes were wild with fear. Victor isn't like normal people. He doesn't stop. He doesn't give up. When I left, he called me. He was calm. So calm. He said he'd find us before dawn. He said running only made it worse. He's not going to find you. How do you know? Marcus met her gaze steadily. Because this cabin has one road in and I've got eyes on it. Because the storm will buy us 12 hours minimum. And because when he does come, I'll be ready. Grace studied his face, searching for doubt. Why are you doing this? You don't know us. You don't owe us anything. You could have turned us away. The question hung in the air. Marcus thought about the past 3 years. The isolation. The drinking. The slow surrender to despair. He thought about Sarah and Lily, about the man he'd been before he lost them, and the ghost he'd become after. 3 years ago, he said slowly, my wife and daughter died in a fire while I was deployed overseas. I wasn't there to save them. I couldn't protect the people I loved most in the world. He paused, his voice thickening. I came up here to disappear, to punish myself, to wait for death. Grace's expression softened with understanding. I'm sorry. When I opened that door tonight and saw you standing there with your children, I felt something I haven't felt since they died. Marcus swallowed hard. Purpose. Like maybe there was a reason I survived. Like maybe this moment was what I was being saved for. Tears welled in Grace's eyes. You think God sent us to you? I think God gave us both a choice tonight. You chose to fight through that storm to save your children. And I chose to open my door. Marcus shook his head slowly. I don't know if that's divine plan or just chance, but I know this, I'm not going to waste the choice. Your children are going to grow up safe, and the man who hurt them is going to face justice. A soft sound came from near the fire. Marcus turned to see Noah sitting up, his eyes fixed on them. He'd been listening. Do you really think you can stop him? The boy asked. His voice trembled with desperate hope. Marcus walked over and crouched before him. I know I can. He's strong and mean, and he has so many people who do what he says. Noah, let me ask you something. Do you know what a Navy SEAL is? The boy nodded. Soldiers who swim and fight and do impossible stuff. That's right. For 15 years, that's what I did. I went into places where bad men thought they were safe, and I took them down. Men with armies. Men with money. Men who thought they were untouchable. Marcus put his hand on Noah's shoulder. Your father thinks he's a wolf, but I've hunted wolves my whole life, and now he's coming into my territory. Something shifted in Noah's face. The fear didn't disappear, but beneath it, a spark ignited. You're going to get him. I'm going to stop him. And I'm going to make sure he can never hurt you or your family again. Marcus squeezed his shoulder. But I need your help. My help? I need you to be brave for your mom and your sisters. I need you to watch out for them while I deal with what's coming. Can you do that? Noah straightened, his small jaw set with determination that would have looked comical if it weren't so heartbreakingly earnest. Yes, sir. Good man. Marcus ruffled his hair and stood. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Mini-climax: Noah's transformation. The hours crept past. Marcus maintained his vigil by the window, watching the storm batter the mountain, while his mind worked through possibilities. He had no phone signal up here, no way to call for help. The road down was impassable in this weather. For better or worse, they were on their own until the storm broke. Victor Mitchell would be mobilizing resources. Money bought speed, and speed was everything in a hunt. The moment conditions allowed, he'd have men on this mountain. The question was how many and how good. Ranger lay near the fire, positioned so he could see both the door and the sleeping family. The dog hadn't truly relaxed since the children arrived, his training keeping him in a state of controlled alertness. We've got a fight coming, boy, Marcus murmured. You ready? Ranger's tail twitched once. His amber eyes gleamed in the firelight. Marcus turned back to the window. The snow had lessened slightly in the past hour, and he could see glimpses of the tree line through the white curtain. His property sprawled across 40 acres of mountain terrain, most of it steep and wooded. He knew every inch of it, every trail, every ridge, every choke point where an enemy would have to pass. If Victor brought men, they'd come up the main road. It was the only way to get vehicles close enough for a quick extraction. That meant a narrow approach through heavily forested terrain. Perfect for defensive operations. Marcus began making plans. He had supplies, food, water, medical gear, weapons, a hunting rifle, a shotgun, 2 handguns. Not an arsenal, but enough. More importantly, he had training and terrain advantage. Victor's men, whoever they were, would be coming into unfamiliar territory against a former SEAL who had 3 years of nothing to do but study every contour of this mountain. It wasn't going to be enough to just survive, though. Marcus needed to get Grace's evidence to people who could act on it. That meant getting off this mountain and finding law enforcement he could trust. His mind went to the small town at the base of the mountain. Ridgewood. Population 3,000. Sheriff's department with 6 deputies. He knew them by sight, had interacted with a few over the years when he came down for supplies. One face stood out. Elena Vasquez. Latina woman, mid-30s with sharp eyes and a demeanor that suggested she'd seen too much to be easily fooled. She'd helped him once when his truck broke down, and something about the way she carried herself had stuck with him. Career cop, he'd guessed. Someone who became an officer for the right reasons. If anyone in that town could be trusted, it might be her. But reaching her meant surviving whatever Victor sent first. A small cry pierced his thoughts. Marcus turned to see Emma twitching in her mother's arms, face contorted in the grip of a nightmare. Grace murmured soothingly, stroking her daughter's hair, and slowly the child settled. Marcus watched them, and the weight of what he'd committed to settled fully on his shoulders. A mother. 4 children. At least one badly traumatized. All of them hunted by a man with unlimited resources and no conscience. He should have felt overwhelmed. Instead, he felt something he hadn't experienced since his SEAL days' clarity. This was what he was made for. Protecting the innocent. Standing between evil and the people who couldn't fight it themselves. He'd lost that purpose when Sarah and Lily died, had convinced himself that his failure meant he didn't deserve it anymore. But here now, with 4 children sleeping by his fire and a monster circling in the storm, Marcus finally understood the truth. His family's death wasn't a punishment. It was a wound. And wounds could heal. Maybe that's what this was. The first step toward healing. Major twist point. The storm began dying around 4 in the morning. Marcus watched it weaken with grim anticipation, knowing that each passing hour brought Victor Mitchell closer. He was checking the rifle's action when Ranger suddenly went, rigid ears pricking toward the door. Marcus froze, every sense straining. A sound. Faint, but unmistakable. An engine. Marcus killed the lantern, plunging the cabin into darkness, lit only by the dying fire. He moved to the window, peering out at the pre-dawn gray. Headlights, coming up the mountain road. "Grace." His voice was low and sharp. "Wake up. We have company." Grace's eyes flew open. She saw his expression, and her face went white. No, it's too soon. The storm. Someone's coming. Get the children to the back room, now." Grace moved with desperate speed, gathering Emma in her arms and shaking Noah awake. The boy came alert instantly, terror already written on his face. "Is it him?" Noah whispered. "Maybe. Get your sisters. Stay quiet. Stay together." Noah nodded and grabbed the twins, pulling them toward the narrow hallway that led to the cabin's single back room. They went without protest, too scared to do anything but obey. Marcus grabbed his rifle and checked the magazine. Full. He had his handgun in a holster at his hip, and the shotgun leaning by the door. Ranger stood beside him, muscles coiled, a low, continuous growl rumbling in his chest. "Easy, boy. Not yet." The headlights grew closer. Marcus counted the seconds, estimating speed and distance. The vehicle was moving slowly, cautiously. Whoever was driving knew these roads weren't safe in current conditions. Finally, a shape emerged from the darkness. A single vehicle. Black SUV high-end, with reinforced bumpers and tinted windows. It stopped 100 yards down the road. Marcus watched through the rifle scope as the driver's door opened. A man stepped out into the early morning gloom. Tall, heavily built, with the controlled movements of someone who knew how to handle himself. He wore a tactical jacket and had a holstered pistol visible at his hip. Not Victor. Too young, too athletic. One of his people. The man stood beside the SUV, scanning the terrain with professional assessment. He raised something to his ear, a phone or radio, and spoke briefly. Then he got back in the vehicle and turned around, heading back down the mountain. Marcus exhaled slowly. Scout. They were mapping the approach, checking conditions, gathering intelligence. Victor was being smart, sending ahead to probe before committing his main force, which meant the real assault was still coming. Marcus lowered the rifle and moved to the back room. Grace sat in the corner with all 4 children pressed against her, their eyes huge in the darkness. "He's gone," Marcus said. "For now." "Who was it?" "Scout. Your husband's checking the roads, making sure he knows what he's dealing with." Grace closed her eyes. "Then we're out of time." "No. We have a window. He won't commit his people until he's confident of success. That means daylight, maybe mid-morning." Marcus crouched before her. "I have a plan, but it's going to require you to trust me completely." "I already trust you. This will require more. I need you to take the children and hide. There's a place on my property, a cave system in the ridge behind the cabin. It's concealed, defensible, and warm enough to wait out a siege. You'll have supplies, water, everything you need." "And what will you be doing?" Marcus met her eyes. "Drawing them away from you, making them think you're still in the cabin, picking them off when they make their move. That's suicide. You can't fight them alone." "I've done it before. Worse odds than this." "But, Grace," Marcus's voice was firm but gentle, Your children need you alive. They need you to get off this mountain and get that evidence to people who can use it. My job is to make sure you have that chance." Grace stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "I just found you. I can't lose you too." The words hit Marcus harder than he expected. He thought of Sarah, of the last words she'd spoken to him before he deployed. "Come back to us." He hadn't. Not in time. Not when it mattered. But this was different. This time, he could choose. "You're not going to lose me," he said, "but you have to let me do what I'm good at. Let me be what I was trained to be." Noah spoke from behind his mother. "What were you trained to be?" Marcus looked at the boy, at the hope and fear warring in his young face. "A guardian," he said simply. "Now let's move. We don't have much time." The cave entrance was hidden behind a tangle of fallen timber and winter-dead brush, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Marcus had discovered it during his first summer on the mountain, mapped every inch of its winding passages, and stocked it with emergency supplies against the day he might need a fallback position. He never imagined that day would come like this. Grace carried Emma against her chest, while Noah herded the twins through the snow. The children moved in exhausted silence, too tired and scared for questions. Ranger walked point, his nose testing the air for threats. "How much further?" Grace's breath came in ragged gasps. The cold was brutal, and she hadn't fully recovered from her ordeal the night before. "Just over this ridge." Marcus helped her up the final slope, one hand on her elbow, the other gripping his rifle. His eyes never stopped scanning the tree line. The scout's appearance had accelerated his timeline. Victor's men could return within hours. They reached the cave mouth, and Marcus pulled aside the camouflage netting he'd rigged years ago. The opening was narrow, barely wide enough for an adult to squeeze through, but it widened into a chamber large enough to shelter a dozen people. "Inside! Quickly!" Grace hesitated at the entrance, her face pale with fear. "It's so dark." "There are lanterns, blankets, food and water for a week." Marcus pressed a flashlight into her hand. "Noah, you remember how to use the emergency radio I showed you?" The boy nodded, his jaw tight with determination. "If something happens to me, if I don't come back by nightfall, you use that radio. Channel 9. You tell whoever answers that you need Deputy Elena Vasquez from the Ridgewood Sheriff's Department. Tell her everything. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir." Marcus gripped his shoulder. "You're a brave kid, Noah. Your mom's lucky to have you." "Marcus," Grace's voice broke. She reached out and grabbed his arm with desperate strength. "Please, please come back." He looked at her, at the fear and hope warring in her exhausted face, and felt something shift in his chest. 3 years of numbness cracking open. "I'll come back," he said. "I promise." Then he turned and disappeared into the trees before she could see the doubt in his eyes. The cabin sat quiet in the gray morning light when Marcus returned. He moved through the rooms with mechanical efficiency, setting up the deception that might buy Grace and the children their lives. He rumpled blankets near the fire, left half-eaten food on the table, scattered toys the children had been too traumatized to play with. Anyone watching would think the family was still inside, still vulnerable, still waiting to be taken. Ranger stayed close, matching his movements with the synchronized awareness of a partner who'd worked beside him through hell and back. "We're going to have company soon, boy." Marcus checked his rifle for the 3rd time. "Probably more than we can handle head-on. So we do this smart. We do this patient." The dog's ears pricked at the sound of his voice, amber eyes steady. Marcus positioned himself in the tree line 200 yards from the cabin's front door high ground, with clear sight lines and multiple escape routes. From here, he could see anyone approaching on the main road long before they reached the structure. The snow had stopped falling, but the sky remained heavy with clouds. No helicopter support in these conditions. That was one advantage. He settled in to wait. The first vehicle appeared at 9:47 a.m. Marcus watched through his scope as a black SUV crept up the mountain road, the same one from earlier. It stopped at the edge of his property line, and two men emerged. Both armed, both moving with professional caution. A second vehicle followed, then a third. 6 men total. Tactical gear. Coordinated movements. These weren't hired thugs. These were trained operators, private military contractors by the look of them. Victor Mitchell had serious resources. Marcus felt the old calm settling over him, the battle focus that had kept him alive through dozens of operations. Fear existed somewhere distant, acknowledged, but irrelevant. What mattered now was the mission. The men spread out, approaching the cabin from multiple angles. Standard room clearing formation. They'd breach simultaneously, expecting to find a defenseless woman and 4 children inside. They had no idea the cabin was empty. Marcus lined up his first shot. The lead man reached the front door. He raised his hand, signaling the others. 3 seconds to breach. 2. 1. Marcus squeezed the trigger. The shot took the man in the shoulder, spinning him away from the door. Not a kill shot. Deliberate. Marcus needed them scared, not dead. Dead men couldn't report back to Victor. Scared men made mistakes. Chaos erupted below. The remaining 5 scattered for cover, shouting, weapons raised, searching for the source of the shot. Another man broke for the tree line on the west side. Marcus shifted aim and fired again. The bullet kicked up snow inches from the running man's feet. He dove behind a fallen log, cursing. "Contact sniper in the ridge." Marcus was already moving. He'd learned long ago that the key to fighting superior numbers was never being where they expected. Fire and relocate. Fire and relocate. Make them think they were facing multiple shooters. He reached his secondary position 30 yards east and dropped prone behind a boulder. Through the scope, he watched the men regrouping, their confidence shattered by the ambush. One of them had a radio pressed to his ear, calling for instructions. Calling Victor. Good. Let him know his easy prey had teeth. The wounded man was being dragged toward one of the SUVs, leaving a red trail in the snow. The others had gone to ground, unwilling to advance against an unknown threat. Stalemate. But Marcus knew it wouldn't last. Victor would send more men, better prepared. Maybe wait for nightfall, when thermal optics would give them the advantage. He needed to end this before that happened. A new sound reached his ears. Engine. Coming fast up the mountain road. Marcus swung his scope toward the sound and felt his stomach drop. A convoy. 4 more vehicles. At least a dozen additional men. And in the lead car, visible through the windshield, a face Marcus recognized from Grace's description. Victor Mitchell had come himself. The man who stepped out of the lead vehicle looked nothing like the monster Marcus had imagined. Victor Mitchell was handsome in a polished corporate way, tall fit with silver-touched hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to absolute authority. He wore a wool overcoat that probably cost more than Marcus's truck, and he surveyed the scene with cold, calculating eyes. Report. One of the original team hurried to his side. Sniper, sir. Ridge line. He hit Jackson in the shoulder. We can't get a fix on his position. 1 man. We think so, sir. Could be more. Victor's lip curled with contempt. 1 man is holding off 6 of my best people. He's got tactical training, sir. Military, by the way he moves. Victor went still. Something flickered in his eyes. interest, amusement. Interesting. Emily mentioned she found shelter with someone. I assumed it was some mountain hermit with a hunting rifle. He smiled, and the expression contained no warmth at all. It seems my wife has finally shown some intelligence in her choice of allies. Orders, sir. Victor studied the tree line, his gaze sweeping the ridge where Marcus lay hidden. For one terrible moment, it seemed like he was looking directly at him. Flush him out. I don't care how many men it takes. I want my children recovered within the hour, and I want this guardian of theirs brought to me alive. The smile widened. I'd like to have a conversation with him before he dies. Marcus watched the men spreading out, preparing for a coordinated assault. 18 against 1 now. No matter how good he was, those odds would eventually overwhelm him. He needed to change the game. Pulling back from his position, Marcus made a decision. He couldn't win a straight fight, but he didn't need to. He just needed to buy time and create chaos. The mountain was his territory. Every trail, every hollow, every deadfall. Victor's men were invading blind. Time to make them pay for it. Marcus moved through the forest like a ghost, years of training guiding his feet along paths that left minimal tracks. He circled wide, coming around behind the convoy, while Victor's men pushed toward where they thought he was hiding. The vehicles sat unattended. 6 SUVs' engines still running against the cold. Marcus pulled his knife and went to work. Tires hissed as he slashed them one after another. 6 vehicles disabled in under 2 minutes. When Victor's men retreated, they'd be doing it on foot through miles of mountain wilderness. He was moving toward the tree line when a voice froze him in his tracks. Don't move. Marcus turned slowly. One of Victor's men stood 10 feet away, pistol leveled at his chest. Young guy, early 20s, with nervous eyes and a trembling grip. Drop the weapon. Marcus let the knife fall. On your knees, hands behind your head. He complied, mind racing. The kid was scared, barely holding it together. That made him dangerous and exploitable. You're making a mistake, Marcus said quietly. Shut up. You know what your boss does, don't you? What he really does? The gun wavered. I said shut up. Children. He sells children. Is that what you signed up for? Is that the kind of man you want to work for? You don't know what you're talking about. I've seen the evidence. Photos, transaction records. Dozens of kids who disappeared through his foster homes. Marcus held the young man's eyes. Some of those kids were probably the same age you were when you decided to become whatever this is. Does that sit right with you? The gun shook harder. Marcus saw conflict in the kid's face, doubt warring with fear. He'll kill me if I let you go. He'll kill you anyway. Men like Victor don't leave witnesses. When this is over, when he has what he wants, everyone who knows the truth becomes a liability. Marcus kept his voice calm, reasonable. You're not a murderer. I can see it. You got into this for the money, maybe the excitement, but this isn't what you wanted. Tears welled in the young man's eyes. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the kids. I needed the work. He paid well and didn't ask questions. What's your name? Tyler. Tyler, I'm going to give you a choice. You can shoot me and stay loyal to a man who sells children to pedophiles. Or you can walk away right now. Disappear into these mountains. I'll give you a head start, before anyone knows you're gone. Tyler's hands trembled violently. The gun dropped a few inches. He'll find me. Not if he's in prison. And that's where he's going, Tyler. Today, or tomorrow, or next week. The evidence exists. It's going to come out. The only question is which side of it you want to be on when it does. A long moment passed. The wind cut through the trees, carrying the distant shouts of men searching the ridge. Tyler lowered the gun. Go, he whispered. Just go. Marcus rose slowly. He picked up his knife and sheathed it, never breaking eye contact with the young man. There's a trail half a mile east. It leads down to a logging road. Follow it, and you'll hit the highway by nightfall. Tyler nodded jerkily. He looked like he might vomit. One more thing. Marcus stepped closer. If you ever find yourself in trouble, if you ever want to make this right, there's a deputy in Ridgewood, Elena Vasquez. Tell her what you know. Tell her everything. It might be the only thing that saves your soul. Then he was gone, melting into the forest before Tyler could change his mind. The hunt continued through the morning. Marcus played cat and mouse with Victor's men, leading them away from the cave, picking off opportunities when they presented themselves. 2 more wounded. 1 man fell into a ravine trying to pursue too aggressively. Chaos and confusion rippled through the search parties. But Victor Mitchell was not a fool. By noon, he'd pulled his men back and regrouped. Marcus watched from a distant ridge as the businessman stood in the center of the cabin's clearing, speaking into his phone. Reinforcements. Had to be. The window was closing. Marcus checked his ammunition. 4 rifle rounds, 12 in the handgun. Not enough for another extended engagement. He needed to extract Grace and the children and get off this mountain before Victor's backup arrived. He started moving toward the cave. The sound of a helicopter changed everything. Marcus looked up and saw it coming over the eastern ridge, a black civilian model modified for rough terrain. It swept low over the tree line, searching. Victor had called in air support. The helicopter meant thermal imaging. Nowhere to hide. The cave would show up as a warm spot against the frozen mountain, 5 heat signatures clustered together like a beacon. Marcus ran. He crashed through underbrush, abandoning stealth for speed. Branches tore at his face and arms. His lungs burned with cold air. Behind him he heard the helicopter changing course, the pilot having spotted movement. They were tracking him. Good. Better him than the cave. Better him than Grace and the children. He burst into a clearing and stopped dead. 3 of Victor's men stood waiting, weapons raised. They'd anticipated his route, cut him off. On your knees! Marcus's hand moved toward his holster. Don't even think about it. On your knees now. The helicopter roared overhead, kicking up snow in a blinding vortex. Marcus squinted against the assault, calculating angles, distances, odds. 3 armed men. 1 helicopter. No cover. Impossible odds. He raised his hands. They bound his wrists with zip ties, rough hands searching him for weapons. His rifle was taken, his handgun, his knife. Everything that had kept him alive through the morning. Mr. Mitchell will be very pleased, one of the men said. He's been wanting to meet you. They marched him back toward the cabin. The helicopter landed in the clearing, rotors slowly winding down. Victor Mitchell stood waiting beside it, that cold smile still fixed on his handsome face. The mountain man, Victor said, as Marcus was forced to his knees before him. I have to admit you've impressed me. 6 of my men wounded. My vehicle's disabled. All from 1 person. He crouched down, studying Marcus with clinical interest. Who are you? Marcus said nothing. Former military, obviously. Special operations, if I had to guess. The way you move, the way you set up your ambushes. You've done this before. Silence. Victor's smile faded. He reached out and gripped Marcus's jaw with surprising strength, forcing eye contact. I asked you a question. My name is Marcus Cole, and you're a dead man walking. Victor laughed. Genuine amusement. Is that so? You're bound on your knees, surrounded by my men, and I'm the one in danger. The evidence is already out. Your wife's phone, your files, your buyer lists. By tomorrow, every law enforcement agency in 3 states will have copies. For the first time, something flickered in Victor's composure. Uncertainty. You're bluffing. Am I? Your wife walked through a blizzard to find help. She didn't do that to die in a cave. She did it to make sure you couldn't hurt anyone else's children. The moment she reached me, your empire started falling apart." Victor's grip tightened painfully. "Where is she? Where are my children?" Marcus smiled through the pain. "Somewhere you'll never find them." The blow came fast, Victor's fist crashing into his temple. Stars exploded across Marcus's vision. Blood filled his mouth. "Find them," Victor snarled at his men. "Search every inch of this mountain. I want them found within the hour." The men spread out, and Marcus felt a cold satisfaction beneath the pain. They'd search. They'd waste time. And every minute they wasted was a minute closer to help arriving. Because he hadn't been bluffing. Before leaving Grace at the cave, he'd done one more thing. He'd activated the emergency beacon. The sound of approaching vehicles reached them 20 minutes later. Victor looked up sharply, his face tightening with concern. "That's not ours." 4 Sheriff's Department SUVs burst into the clearing lights flashing. Deputies poured out weapons drawn, taking cover behind their vehicles. "Sheriff's Department, everyone on the ground! Now!" Victor's men hesitated, looking to their boss for guidance. They were outnumbered, now outgunned, with nowhere to run. And at the front of the deputies, her weapon leveled at Victor Mitchell's chest, stood Elena Vasquez. "Victor Mitchell!" she called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You're under arrest for human trafficking, conspiracy, and assault. Get on the ground. Now!" Victor's mask finally cracked. Rage twisted his handsome features into something ugly and desperate. "You can't do this. Do you know who I am? I'll have your badge. I'll have you on the ground." Marcus watched from his knees as Victor Mitchell, the monster who had terrorized his own family and destroyed countless children's lives, slowly sank to the frozen earth. Deputies swarmed forward, securing his men, reading rights, restoring order to chaos. Elena Vasquez approached Marcus and cut his bonds with a single slice of her knife. "You the one who activated the beacon?" He nodded, rubbing circulation back into his wrists. "Hell of a signal. We've been trying to build a case against Mitchell for 2 years. Never had enough evidence." She studied him with sharp, assessing eyes. "Your friend Grace says she has files, transaction records, names." "She does. Then this might finally be the day we take this whole network down." Elena extended her hand and helped him to his feet. "Where is she? Where are the children?" Marcus looked toward the ridge where the cave lay hidden, where Grace and her children were still waiting, still hoping, still terrified that salvation might not come. "I'll take you to them." And for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Cole allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he hadn't failed after all. The walk to the cave felt longer than Marcus remembered. His body ached from the morning's exertion, and the blow to his head had left a dull throb behind his eyes. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the woman and 4 children waiting in the darkness, not knowing if they would live or die. Elena Vasquez walked beside him, her hand resting on her holstered weapon. 2 other deputies followed at a distance, securing the perimeter. "How long have you been after Mitchell?" Marcus asked. 2 years. Started when a foster kid in my district went missing. Then another. Then I started seeing patterns." Elena's jaw tightened. "Every time I got close to something solid, the investigation would get shut down. Pressure from above. Evidence would disappear. Witnesses would suddenly forget what they saw." "Corruption. Deep. Mitchell has people in the state attorney's office. The police union may be higher. I've been building a shadow case on my own time, waiting for a break that never came." She glanced at him. "Until today." They reached the ridge, and Marcus stopped at the hidden entrance. "Grace," he called softly. "It's Marcus. It's safe. I'm coming in." Silence. Then a rustling sound and Noah's face appeared in the gap between the rocks. His eyes went wide when he saw the deputies. "It's okay," Marcus said. "These are the good guys. They're here to help." Noah's gaze shifted to Marcus, searching for confirmation. Whatever he saw there satisfied him. He disappeared back into the darkness. A moment later, Grace emerged, Emma clutched against her chest. The twins followed, clinging to Noah's hands. All of them looked exhausted, terrified, and desperately hopeful. Grace saw Marcus and her composure shattered. "You came back!" She was crying, stumbling toward him. "You came back!" Marcus caught her with one arm, steadying her. "I told you I would. I heard the helicopter. I heard gunshots. I thought—" She couldn't finish. "It's over. Victor's in custody. His men are being arrested." Marcus looked down at Emma, who stared up at him with huge, solemn eyes. "You're safe now. All of you." Noah stepped forward, his small body vibrating with tension. "Is he really caught?" "My dad—" Elena crouched to meet the boy's eyes. "He's really caught, and he's never going to hurt you again. I promise you that." Something broke in Noah's expression. The wall he'd been holding up for days, maybe months, finally crumbled. He threw himself against Marcus's legs and sobbed great heaving cries that shook his entire body. Marcus froze. The contact, the raw need of it, cut through every defense he'd built. He thought of the son he'd never held, the child who died before he could know his father's touch. Slowly, carefully, he placed his hand on Noah's head. "It's okay," he said roughly. "Let it out. You're safe now." The twins began crying too, their silent shock finally giving way to the terror they'd been holding inside. Grace gathered them close, tears streaming down her own face, and for a long moment the mountain was filled with the sound of a family releasing grief they'd carried too long. Elena watched with eyes that glistened suspiciously. She turned away, speaking quietly into her radio, giving them privacy. When the tears finally subsided, Marcus helped Grace to her feet. "We need to get you off this mountain," he said. "There's going to be a lot of questions, statements to give, evidence to process." "The phone," Grace said suddenly. "The evidence. It's still in the cave." "I'll get it." Elena moved toward the entrance. "Don't worry. Everything you have is going to be documented and protected." Grace's hand found Marcus's arm. Her grip was tight, desperate. "What happens now to us?" "Now you tell your story. Every detail. The deputies will take you somewhere safe while the investigation proceeds." "And you?" Marcus hesitated. This was the moment he'd been avoiding thinking about. The crisis was over. Grace didn't need him anymore. She had law enforcement evidence protection. His role was finished. "I'll give my statement," he said carefully. "Help however I can." "That's not what I meant." Grace's brown eyes held his. "Where do you go after this? Back to your cabin. Back to being alone." The question hit harder than Victor's fist. "I haven't thought that far ahead." "Then think about it now." Grace stepped closer. "You saved our lives. You fought for us when you had no reason to. When you had every reason to just turn us away and protect yourself." "I had reasons." "Tell me." Marcus looked at her, at the children clustered around her, at Ranger sitting patiently beside Noah. He thought about the past 3 years, the silence, the guilt, the slow surrender to despair. "When you knocked on my door," he said slowly, "I was already dead. I just hadn't stopped breathing yet. Losing my family destroyed something inside me. I convinced myself I didn't deserve to live, didn't deserve to feel anything except pain. And now I don't know. But for the first time in 3 years, I want to find out." Grace's hand moved from his arm to his face, her cold fingers gentle against his bruised cheek. Then find out with us, she whispered. We need you, Marcus. The kids need you. I need you. Before he could respond, Elena returned from the cave. She held Grace's phone in an evidence bag, her expression tight with controlled excitement. This is it, she said. This is everything we need. I've already called the state attorney's office, the real one, not Mitchell's people. FBI is being notified. This is going federal. How many children? Grace asked. In those files, how many are still out there? Elena's face grew grim. Based on what I've seen, at least 30 are unaccounted for. Kids who entered Mitchell's foster system and never came out the other side. Can you find them? We're going to try. The transaction records, the buyer codes, it's a roadmap. It'll take time to decode, but... Elena paused, and something fierce burned in her eyes. We're going to find every single one of them, and everyone who touched this operation is going to face justice. The convoy down the mountain moved slowly, carefully navigating roads still treacherous with snow. Grace and the children rode in Elena's vehicle, wrapped in emergency blankets, slowly thawing from their ordeal. Marcus rode in the car behind Ranger at his side, watching the trees slip past the window. His mind kept returning to Grace's words. Find out with us. He'd spent 3 years believing he didn't deserve a second chance at life, that his failure to save Sarah and Lily meant he should spend his remaining years in penance. But now, with 4 traumatized children and their brave mother counting on him, that certainty felt less like principle and more like cowardice. Maybe surviving wasn't about deserving. Maybe it was about choosing to keep going despite the pain. The sheriff's station in Ridgewood was chaos when they arrived. Deputies rushing phones, ringing federal agents already on site, demanding briefings. Victor Mitchell sat in a holding cell. His expensive coat rumpled his perfect hair, disordered his eyes, burning with impotent rage. Marcus watched through the observation window as FBI agents questioned him. You have no idea what you've done, Victor said, his voice silk over steel. The people I work with have reach you can't imagine. This investigation will be buried within a week. I don't think so, Mr. Mitchell. The agent across from him slid a photograph across the table. A young girl, maybe 7 years old, with frightened eyes, and a number written on a card she held against her chest. We found this image on your wife's phone, along with 46 others like it, and transaction records linking them to bank accounts in your name. Victor's composure cracked. That evidence was obtained illegally. My wife had no right. Your wife had every right to protect her children from a monster. The agent's voice went cold. And now she's going to testify against you in federal court, along with at least 3 of your associates who are already negotiating immunity deals. Marcus turned away, satisfied. Victor Mitchell's empire was crumbling around him. The spider had been pulled from his web. He found Grace in a small conference room, the children sleeping on a makeshift bed of coats and blankets. She looked up when he entered, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. They want me to go to a safe house, she said quietly. Until the trial. Until they're sure Victor's network can't reach us. That's smart. His people are still out there. The ones who weren't at the cabin. I know. Grace hesitated. They said you could come with us. If you wanted. Marcus sank into the chair across from her. Is that what you want? I told you what I want. I want you to find out who you are with us beside you. Grace reached across the table and took his hand. But I understand if you can't. If it's too much. You barely know us. You have your own grief to carry. I have no right to ask you to carry ours too. You're not asking me to carry anything. You're asking me to share it. Is there a difference? All the difference in the world. Marcus looked at the sleeping children. Noah, who had shown more courage than men twice his age. The twins still silent, still healing from wounds no child should suffer. Emma, who had called him Mr. Bear and made him feel something besides pain for the first time in years. I spent 3 years alone, he said, telling myself it was what I deserved, punishing myself for not being there when my family needed me. He swallowed hard. But sitting on that mountain waiting to die, I wasn't honoring their memory. I was wasting the life they would have wanted me to live. What would they have wanted? Sarah used to say I was built to protect people, that it was my gift and my burden. Marcus's voice thickened. She would have loved your children. She would have been furious at me for hiding away when there were people who needed help. She sounds like an amazing woman. She was, and she would have told me to get off my ass and start living again. Marcus squeezed Grace's hand. So yes, I'll come with you, if you'll have me. Grace's eyes filled with tears. The kids already think you're a hero. Noah hasn't stopped talking about you since we got here. I'm not a hero. I'm just a broken man who finally found something worth fighting for. Maybe that's what heroes are. Before Marcus could respond, the door burst open. Elena Vasquez stood in the entrance, her face pale with shock. We have a problem. Marcus was on his feet instantly. What kind of problem? One of Mitchell's men escaped during transport. Dean Cross, his number 2. Elena's hand rested on her weapon. He was the one coordinating the whole operation. The trafficking routes, the buyer contacts, everything. Where is he now? We don't know. His transport vehicle was found abandoned 15 minutes ago. Driver unconscious. Cross is in the wind. Elena's eyes met Marcus's. And we have reason to believe he's coming for Grace. Why Grace? Because she's the only witness who can connect Cross directly to the trafficking operation. Mitchell ran the business side. Cross ran the logistics. Without Grace's testimony, he might be able to disappear, start over somewhere else. Marcus felt the cold focus returning the battle clarity that had kept him alive through the morning. Where's this safe house? I can't tell you that. Elena, I just spent 12 hours defending this family from an army. Do you really think I'm going to let them go somewhere alone with a killer hunting them? The deputy hesitated, conflict visible in her expression. Protocol warred with common sense. The house is outside Richmond, 50 miles from here. We have 2 agents assigned, but if Cross is as good as his file suggests, then you need someone with my skill set. Marcus stepped closer. I know you have rules. I know I'm a civilian. But those children trust me. Grace trusts me. And right now, trust might be the only thing keeping them alive. Elena studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. I'll make some calls, but you follow orders. You're there as protection, not as a vigilante. Understood. Elena left, already speaking rapidly into her phone. Marcus turned back to Grace, who had heard everything. This isn't over, she said. Her voice was steady, but fear flickered in her eyes. Not yet, but it will be. Marcus crossed to her and took both her hands in his. Cross is good, but I'm better. And this time he's not hunting prey. He's walking into a trap. You can't know that. I know myself. I know what I'm capable of. And I know that nothing on this earth will stop me from keeping you and those children safe. Grace looked up at him, and something passed between them. An understanding deeper than words. A bond forged in crisis and tempered by shared trauma. I believe you, she whispered. Then help me wake the children. We need to move. The safe house was a modest farmhouse, set back from the road, surrounded by empty fields and winter bare trees. The FBI agents were young but competent, taking positions at windows and doors, while Marcus secured the interior. Grace put the children to bed in a room on the second floor, their exhausted bodies finally surrendering to sleep. Noah fought against it, wanting to stay alert, wanting to protect his siblings. "Rest," Marcus told him. "I'll keep watch. Nothing's getting past me." "Promise. On my life." Noah finally closed his eyes, and Marcus felt the weight of that promise settle onto his shoulders. 4 children. 1 mother. 1 killer in the darkness. He checked his borrowed weapon, a standard-issue Glock 19. Not his preferred firearm, but solid and reliable. Ranger paced beside him, sensing the tension, ready for whatever came. The first 2 hours passed in tense silence. Marcus moved between rooms, checking sight lines, monitoring the agents' positions. Everything stayed quiet. Too quiet. The hair on his neck prickled. Something was wrong. "Agent Davis," he called softly to the man stationed at the back door. Status, no response. Marcus moved toward the kitchen weapon raised. The back door stood open, cold air streaming in. Agent Davis lay crumpled on the floor, a dart protruding from his neck. Tranquilizer. Still breathing. Cross was already inside. Marcus keyed his radio. "Agent Monroe, we're compromised. Back door breach. Davis is down." Static. He moved toward the front of the house and found Monroe slumped against the wall, another dart in her shoulder. The front door hung open. A voice came from the darkness upstairs. "Marcus Cole, the mountain man himself." Marcus froze at the base of the stairs. Dean Cross stood on the landing above, a pistol in one hand, his other arm wrapped around Grace's throat. Behind him, the children's bedroom door stood open. "I did my research after you embarrassed us on the mountain," Cross said. He was tall, lean, with the cold eyes of a predator. "Former Navy SEAL. Decorated combat veteran. Lost your family 3 years ago. Been hiding ever since. Let her go. Put down your weapon first." "You know I can't do that." Cross pressed his gun against Grace's temple. She whimpered, her eyes locked on Marcus' terror, radiating from every pore. "I'm not asking." Marcus calculated angles, distances, risks. Cross was professional, positioned well, using Grace as a perfect shield. Any shot that missed could kill her. Any hesitation could cost them both their lives. "What do you want?" Simple. The phone, the evidence, everything Grace gave to the FBI. "That's already in federal custody. It's over, Cross. Mitchell's network is finished. Networks can be rebuilt. Evidence can be disputed. What matters is eliminating witnesses." Cross's arm tightened around Grace's throat. "Starting with this one." A sound from behind Cross. Small, barely audible. "Noah." The boy stood in the bedroom doorway, his face white with terror, but his eyes burning with determination. In his hands he clutched a heavy bedside lamp raised like a weapon. Cross heard him too late. Noah swung with every ounce of strength in his small body. The lamp connected with the back of Cross's skull with a sickening crack. The killer stumbled, his grip on Grace loosening. It was all Marcus needed. He took the stairs 3 at a time, covering the distance before Cross could recover. His fist connected with the man's jaw, snapping his head back. The gun flew from Cross's hand, clattering down the stairs. Cross was fast, trained, dangerous, even wounded. He threw an elbow that caught Marcus in the ribs, driving the air from his lungs. They grappled on the landing, fighting for control, crashing against the walls. Marcus felt something in the man, something desperate and savage. Cross wasn't fighting to escape. He was fighting to kill. A knee to Marcus's stomach doubled him over. Cross scrambled for the fallen gun, his fingers closing around the grip. Ranger hit him like a missile. 70 pounds of Belgian Malinois slammed into Cross, jaws clamping onto his gun arm. The killer screamed, thrashing, trying to break free. Marcus recovered and drove his fist into Cross's face once, twice, 3 times. Blood splattered across the floor. Cross went limp. For a long moment, the only sound was harsh breathing. Then Grace was there, throwing herself against Marcus, sobbing into his chest. Noah stood frozen in the doorway, the lamp still clutched in his white-knuckled hands. "It's over," Marcus gasped. "It's over." Behind them, Ranger sat on Cross's unconscious body, amber eyes bright with triumph. The twins appeared in the doorway, woken by the commotion. Mia looked at the scene, at the unconscious man, at Marcus, and her mother embracing. And then, for the first time since they'd fled their father's house, she spoke. "Is the bad man gone?" Grace pulled her daughter close, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, baby. All the bad men are gone." Marcus looked at the family gathered around him. Broken, traumatized, but alive, safe, together. And somewhere in the wreckage of his heart, something new began to grow. The aftermath unfolded in a blur of flashing lights and official voices. Paramedics loaded Cross onto a stretcher, while FBI agents swarmed the farmhouse. Elena Vasquez arrived within the hour, her face tight with a mixture of relief and fury. "How did he find us?" she demanded. "The safe house location was classified." "Leak somewhere in your system," Marcus said. He sat on the porch steps, Ranger pressed against his leg. "Mitchell's network runs deeper than you thought." Elena cursed under her breath. "We're moving you again, tonight, somewhere off the grid until the trial. No more safe houses." Marcus stood wincing at the pain in his ribs. "I'm taking them back to my cabin. I know that mountain. I can defend it." "That's not protocol." "Protocol almost got them killed." He met her eyes steadily. "Your people mean well, but they don't know what they're dealing with. Cross was just one operative. Mitchell has others. Money buys loyalty, and scared men make mistakes." Elena wanted to argue. He could see it in her face. But she was smart enough to recognize the truth. "I'll assign a team to patrol the base of your mountain, close enough to respond, far enough to stay out of your way." "That works?" Grace appeared in the doorway, Emma sleeping against her shoulder. The other children clustered behind her, their faces pale, but calmer than before. "We're going back," Noah asked. "To the cabin." Marcus nodded. "If that's okay with your mom." Grace's eyes met his. Something passed between them, an understanding that went beyond words. "It's more than okay," she said softly. "It feels like going home." The drive back to the Blue Ridge Mountains took 4 hours. Marcus drove the FBI's armored SUV Ranger riding shotgun, while Grace kept the children calm in the back. They passed through small towns and empty highways, leaving civilization behind, mile by mile. Noah pressed his face against the window, watching the landscape change. "Mr. Marcus, yeah, what you said before, about your family, about losing them." The boy hesitated. "Does it ever stop hurting?" Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter. "No. It changes, gets quieter sometimes, but it never fully goes away." "Then how do you keep going? You find something worth going for." Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror at the children, at Grace, watching him with soft eyes. "Something that makes the pain mean something." Noah was quiet for a long moment. Then very softly, "I'm glad we knocked on your door." Marcus's throat tightened. "Me too, son. Me too." The cabin waited for them, silent and cold, but welcoming in a way Marcus had never noticed before. He built a fire, while Grace settled the children, and slowly the space filled with warmth and the sounds of a family making themselves at home. It felt different now. The silence that had oppressed him for 3 years was replaced by small voices, by footsteps, by life. Ranger positioned himself near the children, his protective instincts fully engaged. Grace found Marcus on the porch that evening, staring at the stars. "They're finally asleep," she said, settling beside him. "All 4 of them. First time in weeks they've rested without nightmares. They feel safe. They feel protected." Grace's hand found his in the darkness. "Because of you." "We're not out of danger yet. The trial is months away. Mitchell's lawyers are already fighting extradition, trying to suppress evidence." "I know. But tonight, just for tonight, I want to pretend it's over." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Can we do that?" Marcus put his arm around her, pulling her close. "Yeah, we can do that." They sat in silence, watching the stars wheel overhead, and for the first time in years, Marcus felt something other than grief. Hope, fragile and uncertain, but real. Morning brought routine. Marcus taught Noah basic wilderness survival, while Grace worked with the twins on their letters. Emma toddled after Ranger, giggling every time the dog licked her face. The cabin filled with sounds Marcus had forgotten existed, sounds of family, of normalcy. But beneath the surface calm, he remained vigilant. Every unfamiliar sound triggered his alert. Every vehicle on the distant road drew his attention. The battle wasn't over, just paused. Elena called on the 3rd day. "We've recovered 32 children," she said, her voice thick with emotion. 32 kids who were trapped in Mitchell's pipeline. We're still tracking leads on the others." Marcus closed his eyes. 32 families getting their children back. Because of you. Because Grace had the courage to run, and you had the courage to fight. Elena paused. "There's something else. The federal prosecutor wants Grace to testify, in person, at Mitchell's preliminary hearing next week." "That's too soon. She's not ready." "It's necessary. Mitchell's lawyers are claiming the evidence was fabricated, that Grace is mentally unstable. Her testimony could destroy their defense before it gets started." Marcus looked across the room at Grace, who was braiding Mia's hair, while the little girl chattered happily. "I'll talk to her." Grace took the news better than he expected. "I'll do it," she said immediately. "I'll testify." "Are you sure it means facing him again? In the same room?" "I've been running from Victor for years, even before I knew what he really was. I let him control me with fear." Grace's jaw tightened. "Not anymore. Those children deserve justice. I deserve justice. And my kids deserve to see their mother stand up to the man who tried to destroy us." Marcus felt pride swell in his chest. "You're the bravest woman I've ever known." "No. I'm just a mother who finally found something worth fighting for." She smiled, echoing his words from days before. Sound familiar? The courthouse in Richmond was a fortress of security. Federal marshals lined the halls. Armed guards checked credentials at every entrance. The world's media camped outside, hungry for footage of the monster in the dock. Marcus walked beside Grace through the gauntlet of cameras, his hand steady on her back. The children stayed at the cabin with Elena and a team of deputies. Ranger had whined when Marcus left, sensing the danger, but someone needed to guard the family. Victor Mitchell sat at the defense table, immaculate in a designer suit, despite his time in custody. He looked up when Grace entered, and something flickered in his eyes. Surprise. Then cold, calculating rage. Grace flinched, but didn't look away. "You can do this," Marcus whispered. "I know." Her voice was steady. "Stay close." The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Catherine Wells, called Grace to the stand. The courtroom fell silent as she took her seat, her hands folded carefully in her lap. "Mrs. Mitchell, can you tell the court what you discovered on the defendant's computer on November 15th of this year?" Grace took a breath. I found encrypted files containing photographs of children, dozens of children. Each photograph was labeled with a number that corresponded to transaction records in a separate database. And what did these transaction records indicate? Payments. Large payments ranging from $50,000 to $500,000 per child transferred to accounts controlled by my husband. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Victor's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Did you confront the defendant about these files? Yes. Grace's voice wavered for the first time. I asked him what the files were. He told me they were none of my concern. When I pressed him, he became violent. Violent? How? He grabbed me by the throat and pushed me against the wall. He told me that if I ever spoke about what I'd seen, he would kill me slowly and make our children watch. Then he said, Grace swallowed hard. He said he would sell them to the worst people he knew. People who enjoy hurting children. The courtroom erupted. Victor's defense attorney leaped to his feet, objecting. The judge gavelled for order. Through it all, Victor Mitchell sat perfectly still, his eyes locked on Grace with undisguised hatred. Order? The judge's voice cut through the chaos. I will have order in this courtroom. Silence gradually returned. Catherine Wells stepped closer to the witness stand. Mrs. Mitchell, I know this is difficult, but I need to ask you one more question. She paused, letting the moment build. Looking at the defendant now, do you have any doubt that he committed the crimes you've described? Grace raised her eyes and met Victor's gaze directly. None whatsoever. He is a monster who preys on children, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure he faces justice for what he's done. Victor moved. It happened so fast that most people in the courtroom didn't register it until it was over. One moment he was seated at the defense table. The next he had vaulted the barrier and was lunging toward Grace, his face contorted with murderous rage. You ungrateful bitch! Marcus was already moving instinct taking over before conscious thought could form. He intercepted Victor 3 feet from the witness stand, driving his shoulder into the man's chest and taking them both to the ground. Victor fought like a man possessed, clawing, biting, trying to reach Grace, even as marshals swarmed them. Marcus pinned him with moves drilled into muscle memory through years of combat training. It's over, Marcus growled in his ear. You're done. Victor's response was pure venom. I'll kill you. I'll kill her. I'll kill those bastard children. You think bars can hold me? You think... A marshal's knee pressed into Victor's back, cutting off his tirade. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Within seconds, he was being dragged from the courtroom, still screaming threats. Marcus rose slowly, his heart pounding. He looked at Grace, still frozen in the witness stand, her face white with shock. Are you okay? She nodded, unable to speak. The judge, visibly shaken, addressed the courtroom. This hearing is adjourned. Bailiffs clear the room, and someone get that woman some water. Catherine Wells helped Grace down from the stand, while marshals escorted spectators out. Marcus stayed close, his hand on her arm, feeling her tremble. That was my fault, Grace whispered. I provoked him. I shouldn't have... You told the truth. That's all you did. Marcus guided her toward a side door. His reaction proves everything. Everyone in that room saw exactly what kind of man he is. He looked at me like he wanted to kill me. He did, and he would have if he could. But he can't. Not anymore. Marcus stopped and took her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. You were incredible in there. Brave and strong and everything those children need their mother to be. Don't let him take that from you. Tears spilled down Grace's cheeks. I was so scared. Being scared doesn't mean you're not brave. It means you're human. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as she shook. I'm proud of you, Grace. So proud. They stayed that way for a long moment, two broken people holding each other together. The fallout from Victor's outburst was swift and devastating. News footage of his attack played on every channel, destroying any remaining public sympathy. His defense team scrambled to control the damage, but it was too late. The monster had shown his true face to the world. The judge denied bail. The preliminary hearing was fast-tracked. Within days, Victor Mitchell was bound over for trial on 47 counts of human trafficking conspiracy and assault. Elena called with more good news. "We found them," she said, her voice breaking. "All the children, every single one. The last 5 were recovered from a compound in West Virginia this morning. They're going home, Marcus. They're all going home." Marcus relayed the news to Grace, who collapsed into a chair and sobbed with relief. 47 families, she managed through tears. 47 children who get to grow up safe because we fought back. Because you fought back. Marcus knelt beside her. "You're the one who found the evidence. You're the one who risked everything to protect your kids. All I did was open a door." "Don't." Grace grabbed his hand. "Don't minimize what you've done. You saved us. In every way a person can be saved." Noah appeared in the doorway, the twins behind him. They'd heard their mother crying and come to investigate. "Mom? What's wrong?" Grace opened her arms, and all 3 children rushed to her. She held them close, laughing and crying at the same time. "Nothing's wrong, baby. Everything's finally right." Marcus watched the family embrace Ranger, settling at their feet, and felt the last frozen piece of his heart begin to thaw. That night after the children were asleep, Grace found him at the window. "What are you thinking about Sarah and Lily?" His voice was rough. "I used to think about them every moment. The guilt was constant crushing. But lately," he trailed off. "Lately, I still think about them. I still miss them. But the guilt is different now. Smaller, like maybe I'm finally starting to forgive myself." Grace stepped closer, her hand finding his. "They would want that for you." "I know. Sarah used to say that guilt was just love with nowhere to go." Marcus turned to face her. "I think I finally found somewhere." Grace's breath caught. "Marcus, I know it's too soon. I know we've only known each other for weeks, but I've spent 3 years hiding from life, and I don't want to waste another day." He took both her hands in his. "I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. I just want you to know that whatever comes next, I'm not going anywhere." Tears glistened in Grace's eyes. "I thought I'd never trust anyone again. After Victor, after everything, I thought that part of me was dead. And now I'm standing in a cabin on a mountain with a man who fought an army to protect my children." A smile broke through her tears. "How could I not trust that?" Marcus cupped her face in his hands, wiping her tears with his thumbs. "We don't have to rush anything. We have time. We have the rest of our lives." Grace rose on her toes and kissed him, soft and trembling and full of promise. "And I plan to spend every day of it being grateful that I knocked on your door." Marcus pulled her close, and for the first time since Sarah died, he let himself imagine a future. Not just surviving, but living. Not just existing, but loving. A small sound made them both turn. Emma stood in the hallway, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Mama, Mr. Bear," Grace laughed softly. "What is it, sweetheart? Bad dream?" Emma toddled toward them, arms outstretched. "Need hugs." Marcus scooped her up without thinking, settling her against his chest. She snuggled into him immediately, her small fist clutching his shirt. "Stay with me," Emma murmured drowsily. "Forever and ever." Marcus looked at Grace over the child's head. Something unspoken passed between them. "Forever and ever," he promised. "I'm not going anywhere." Emma was asleep again within seconds. Marcus carried her back to bed, tucking her in beside her siblings. Noah stirred as he approached. "Mr. Marcus, go back to sleep, buddy." "Is Mom okay?" "Your mom's perfect. She's the strongest person I've ever met." Noah smiled a real smile, the first one Marcus had seen from him. "She is, isn't she?" "Yeah." Marcus ruffled the boy's hair. "Now rest. Tomorrow we start building a treehouse." "Really? Really? Every kid needs a treehouse." Noah's eyes lit up with excitement before sleep claimed him again. Marcus stood watching them for a long moment, 4 children breathing peacefully, finally safe. He thought of Sarah, of Lily, of the life he'd lost and the life he was being given. And for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Cole allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he deserved to be happy. 3 months passed like a slow exhale after years of holding breath. The snow retreated up the mountain, revealing patches of brown earth that gradually surrendered to green. Marcus woke each morning to sounds he'd forgotten could exist. Children's laughter, pots clattering in the kitchen, Ranger's bark as he chased Noah through the meadow. Life. Real, messy, beautiful life, filling every corner of the cabin that had once been his tomb. Grace stood at the stove when he came downstairs, her dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She turned and smiled, and something in Marcus's chest expanded painfully. "Coffee's ready." "You're spoiling me." "Someone has to." She pressed a mug into his hands, then rose on her toes to kiss his cheek. The twins are actually talking to each other now. Full conversations. I heard them arguing about who gets to feed Ranger this morning. Arguing is good. Arguing is wonderful. Grace's eyes glistened. 3 months ago, they wouldn't speak at all. Now they're fighting over dog food. It's the most normal thing I've ever seen. Emma toddled in from the living room, her arms stretched wide. "Daddy up." Marcus froze the mug halfway to his lips. Grace went still beside him. Emma had called him Mr. Bear for weeks. Then Marcus. Then tentatively Papa. But this was the first time she'd used that word. Daddy. He set down the coffee and lifted her into his arms. She nestled against his chest, completely trusting, completely safe. "Morning, Princess." "Pancakes." "Yeah, baby, pancakes." Grace wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I'll make extra." Noah burst through the door, Ranger at his heels. "Mom, Mr. Marcus, there's someone coming up the road." Marcus set Emma down and moved to the window. His hand found the pistol he now kept within reach, a habit that would take years to break if it ever did. A familiar SUV crested the rise. Elena Vasquez behind the wheel. He relaxed. "It's Elena." The deputy climbed out with a folder under her arm and a smile on her face. Ranger bounded toward her, tail wagging, and she knelt to scratch behind his ears. "Morning, family. Got some news I thought you'd want to hear in person." They gathered around the kitchen table, children included. Elena had become a regular presence over the past months, checking in, updating them on the case, becoming something like family herself. "Victor Mitchell was sentenced this morning," she said. Grace's hand found Marcus's under the table. "And life without parole, 47 counts of human trafficking, conspiracy, assault. The judge threw the book at him so hard it's going to leave bruises." Relief flooded the room. Grace let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh. "It's really over. It's really over. He's going to die in a federal prison. His assets have been seized. His network is completely dismantled." Elena leaned forward, her expression softening. "You did this, Grace. Your courage started a chain reaction that saved 47 children and put away one of the worst predators this country has ever seen." We did this, Grace corrected, looking at Marcus. All of us. Noah straightened in his chair. What about the other bad men, the ones who bought the kids? 43 arrests so far. Politicians, businessmen, a judge. More coming every week as we work through the evidence. Elena's jaw tightened. Every single one of them is going to face justice. I promise you that. The boy nodded slowly, processing. He'd aged years in the past months, carrying burdens no child should know. But beneath the weight, something new was growing. Strength. Purpose. Good, he said simply. They deserve it. Elena stayed for breakfast, then departed with hugs and promises to visit soon. The children scattered to their morning activities. Noah to his treehouse, the twins to their endless project of teaching Ranger new tricks. Emma to her corner, where she played with dolls Marcus had carved from fallen branches. Grace lingered at the table, staring at her coffee. What are you thinking? Marcus asked. That it doesn't feel real. For so long, Victor was this shadow hanging over everything. Even after he was arrested, I kept waiting for something to go wrong. For him to escape. For his people to come back. She looked up. And now it's just done. He's never going to hurt anyone again. Does it feel like closure? I don't know. Maybe closure takes time. Grace's fingers traced the rim of her mug. What I feel right now is gratitude. Overwhelming, terrifying gratitude. For you, for this place, for the chance to watch my children grow up without fear. Marcus reached across and took her hand. They're going to be okay. All of them. Because of you. Because of each other. That's what families do. Grace's eyes widened slightly at the word. Families. It hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Is that what we are? She asked softly. A family? I think we've been a family since the night you knocked on my door. We just hadn't admitted it yet. Tears spilled down Grace's cheeks. Marcus, I've been thinking. His voice roughened. About what comes next. About what I want. What do you want? I want to wake up every morning with you beside me. I want to teach Noah everything I know and watch the twins become whoever they're meant to be. I want to hear Emma call me Daddy for the rest of my life. Marcus squeezed her hand. I want to marry you, Grace. If you'll have me. Grace stared at him, tears streaming freely now. You're serious. I've never been more serious about anything. We've only known each other 3 months. We've known each other through hell, through fire and survival and building something new from ashes. I know you better than I've ever known anyone, and I love you more than I thought I could love again. Grace stood so abruptly her chair scraped against the floor. Marcus's heart lurched, thinking he'd moved too fast, pushed too hard. Then she was in his arms, kissing him with a ferocity that left him breathless. Yes, she gasped against his lips. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The wedding took place on a Sunday morning in late April, when the mountain was drunk on wildflowers and birdsong. They held it at the cabin because nowhere else felt right. Elena came with her partner, a quiet woman named Rosa, who worked at the county hospital. Reverend James Whitfield drove up from Ridgewood to officiate a gentleman with kind eyes who'd heard their story and insisted on being part of their new beginning. A handful of neighbors attended people who'd watched Marcus's transformation from recluse to protector with growing respect. They brought covered dishes and well wishes and the simple warmth of community. Grace wore a white sundress she'd ordered online, simple and elegant. Marcus wore the suit he'd bought for his first wedding 15 years ago, somehow still fitting despite everything. The children served as the wedding party. Noah stood beside Marcus as best man solemn with responsibility. The twins scattered flower petals with enthusiastic abandon. Emma insisted on carrying the rings, clutching them in her small fist like precious treasures, when Grace walked toward him through the meadow. Marcus felt something break open in his chest. The last wall, the final barrier he'd built around his heart. She was beautiful, not just physically, but in the way she carried herself. The survivor who'd become a warrior. The victim who'd become a voice. The mother who'd walked through hell to save her children. His partner. His future. His home. Reverend Whitfield began the ceremony with words about love and resilience, about finding light in darkness and hope in despair. But Marcus barely heard them. His entire world had narrowed to the woman standing before him, her brown eyes shining with tears and joy. "I understand you've written your own vows," the Reverend said. Marcus took Grace's hands in his. "3 months ago, I was dead inside. I'd given up on life on purpose, on ever feeling anything except guilt and grief. Then you knocked on my door, half-frozen, desperate, carrying 4 children through a storm that should have killed you all." His voice thickened. "You didn't just ask me to save your family, Grace. You saved mine. You brought me back from a darkness I never thought I'd escape. You gave me a reason to live again." He paused, gathering himself. "I can't promise perfection. I can't promise I won't have nightmares or dark days or moments when the past feels too heavy to carry. But I can promise you this: I will stand beside you through every storm. I will protect this family with everything I have. And I will love you, all of you, for as long as I draw breath." Grace wiped her eyes, laughing softly at her own tears. "I wrote something down, but I can't remember any of it now." She squeezed his hands. "So I'll just say what's in my heart." She took a shaky breath. "I spent years living in fear. Fear of my husband. Fear of the future. Fear that I would never be strong enough to protect my children from the monsters in this world. Then I met you, and I learned what real strength looks like." Her gaze held his unwavering. "It's not about being fearless. It's about being afraid and fighting anyway. You taught me that. You showed me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the choice to keep going despite it." Her voice broke on the next words. "I love you, Marcus Cole. I love your gentleness and your ferocity. I love the way you make our children feel safe. I love the man you were, the man you are, and the man you're becoming." She smiled through her tears. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life being grateful that I knocked on your door." The Reverend opened his mouth to continue, but a small voice interrupted. "Wait." Everyone turned to see Emma pulling away from the twins, toddling toward Marcus and Grace with fierce determination. "Me too. Me say words too." Grace laughed, bending to pick up her daughter. "What do you want to say, sweetheart?" Emma looked at Marcus with those huge, trusting eyes. "Daddy, stay forever." Marcus's throat closed completely. He couldn't speak, could barely breathe. "Forever," he managed, his voice cracking. "I promise." Emma nodded, satisfied. "Okay, now kiss." The laughter that rippled through the gathering released something in the air, some final tension that had been waiting to break. Even Marcus found himself chuckling despite the tears on his cheeks. "I think we have our orders," the Reverend said, smiling. "By the power vested in me by the Commonwealth of Virginia, and apparently this young lady, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Marcus cupped Grace's face in his hands and kissed her, soft and trembling and full of promise. The children cheered. The guests applauded. Ranger barked excitedly, running circles around the family. When they finally broke apart, Noah stepped forward. His face was serious, but his eyes were bright. "Mr. Marcus, can I ask you something? Anything, buddy?" "Now that you married our mom." The boy hesitated, vulnerability flickering across his features. "Does that make you our dad? For real?" Marcus knelt so he was eye level with the boy. He looked at Noah, at the twins, who had drifted closer to listen, at Emma still in Grace's arms. "I would be honored to be your dad," he said, "if that's what you want." Noah's composure finally cracked. He threw his arms around Marcus's neck and held on like he was afraid to let go. "I want," he whispered. "I really want." Marcus held him tight, one hand cradling the back of the boy's head. "Then it's done. You're my son. All of you are my children. From now until forever." The twins joined the embrace, then Grace and Emma, until the whole family was tangled together in a knot of tears and laughter and love. Later, after the food was eaten, and the guests departed after the children fell asleep in their beds, and the cabin settled into peaceful quiet, Marcus and Grace walked to a place he'd been avoiding for months. The small clearing behind the cabin, the weathered grave markers beneath the ancient pine. Sarah, Lily. Grace held his hand as they approached. She'd known about this place, but had never asked to visit, waiting until he was ready. He was ready now. Marcus knelt before the graves, his throat tight with emotion he'd been holding back all day. "Hey, Sarah. Hey, baby girl." His voice came out rough, barely above a whisper. "I know it's been a while since I talked to you. I'm sorry about that. I was lost for so long. Couldn't find my way back to anything, including you." Grace squeezed his hand, but said nothing. "Something happened. Someone knocked on my door during a storm and everything changed. I found a family, Sarah, a woman and 4 kids who needed help, who needed protecting." He swallowed hard. "I fell in love again. I know you'd understand that. You always told me I was built for love, that I had too much heart to keep it all to myself." A tear slipped down his cheek. "I'm not replacing you. I could never replace you. But I'm ready to live again. I think that's what you'd want for me." He felt Grace kneel beside him. She placed a bouquet of wildflowers at the base of the graves. "I never knew you," Grace said softly. "But I know you must have been extraordinary because you raised a man capable of saving my children. Thank you for loving him. Thank you for shaping him into who he needed to be." She paused, her voice thickening. "I promise to take care of him, to love him as completely as you did, and to honor your memory in how we raise our family." They stayed there for a long time, the living and the dead sharing space in the fading light. Marcus felt something shift inside him, some final weight lifting from his shoulders. Not forgetting, never forgetting, but finally at last, forgiving himself. When they returned to the cabin, Noah was waiting on the porch with a troubled expression. "Dad, there's someone here." Marcus tensed immediately, old instincts flaring. "Who? A young guy. He says his name is Tyler. Says you saved his life." Marcus felt the memory surface, the scared young man with the gun, the choice that had changed both their paths. Tyler stood in the living room, thinner than before, his eyes carrying the weight of hard months. But he was clean, sober, and held himself with a new kind of resolve. "Mr. Cole, I'm sorry to interrupt your wedding. I saw the cars leaving and waited until everyone was gone." He shuffled nervously. I needed to see you." It's okay. What happened to you?" "I did what you said. Went to Deputy Vasquez. Told her everything I knew about Mitchell's operation." Tyler's voice strengthened. "I testified at the trial, helped bring down 3 of his main distributors. The FBI gave me immunity in exchange for cooperation. That took courage. That took you. Tyler stepped forward, emotion breaking through his composure. You could have killed me that day. You had every right. Instead, you gave me a choice. Nobody ever gave me choices before. He pulled something from his pocket, a small wooden coin like the ones given at AA meetings. 60 days clean. I'm enrolled in community college. Criminal justice. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I want to do what Deputy Vasquez does. Stop men like Mitchell. Protect kids like the ones he hurt. Marcus took the coin, turning it over in his fingers. Such a small thing. Such an enormous change it represented. I'm proud of you, Tyler. I came to say thank you, and to tell you that what you said to me in the snow that day, about being on the right side when the truth came out. Tyler's voice cracked. You saved my life, not just from prison, from becoming something I would have hated. You saved yourself. I just showed you the door. That's all anyone needs sometimes. Tyler extended his hand. If I can ever repay you, Marcus shook it firmly. Pay it forward. When you become a deputy, when you find someone else standing at the crossroads, give them the same choice I gave you. Tyler nodded, blinking back tears. I will, I promise. After he left, Grace wrapped her arms around Marcus from behind. How many lives have you changed without even knowing it? Not enough. Never enough. Maybe not. She rested her head against his back. But you're not done yet. We're not done yet. The final gift came a week later. Elena arrived with papers from the courthouse, official documents, legal recognition of what had been true in their hearts for months. Marcus Cole had formally adopted Noah, Mia Lucas, and Emma. They were his children now, in every way that mattered. That night he gathered the family on the porch to watch the sunset. Grace leaned against his shoulder. Noah sat beside them, the twins at his feet. Emma curled in Marcus's lap, half asleep, her thumb in her mouth. Ranger lay across the porch steps, guardian and friend, his amber eyes watching the tree line for threats that no longer came. Dad, Noah's voice was thoughtful. Do you think everything happens for a reason? Marcus considered the question. I used to think life was random, that good things and bad things just happened without meaning. And now I think we make the meaning ourselves. Bad things happened to all of us. Terrible things. But we chose how to respond. Your mom chose to fight. You chose to be brave. I chose to open my door. He looked at the family gathered around him. Maybe that's what makes life beautiful. Not that everything works out, but that we keep choosing hope anyway. Grace kissed his cheek. When did you become a philosopher? About 3 months ago. Some woman crashed into my life and made me start thinking again. She sounds like trouble. The best kind. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. The past was behind them. The future stretched ahead, unknown but full of promise. Marcus thought about Sarah and Lily, about the life he'd lost and the life he'd found, about the thin line between giving up and starting over. He'd spent 3 years waiting to die. Now he understood the truth. He hadn't been waiting. He'd been preparing. Training himself in solitude and grief so that when the moment came, when 4 children and their mother needed a protector, he would be ready. Everything had led to this. Every loss, every wound, every dark night of the soul. And now, finally, he was home. Emma stirred in his lap, her small hand reaching up to touch his face. "Love you, Daddy." Marcus held her closer, his eyes burning with tears he no longer tried to hide. "Love you too, Princess. Forever and ever." The stars emerged one by one as night settled over the mountain. A family sat together on a cabin porch, surrounded by peace, protected by love, healed by the simple miracle of being chosen. And Marcus Cole, the man who had lost everything and found it again, finally understood what Sarah had tried to tell him all those years ago. The heart doesn't run out of love. It just waits for the right people to share it with. He had found them, and he would never let them go.